I call to order the regular meeting of the City Council, August 19th, 2014. Let the record show that all members are present and accounted for. And at this time, we're going to open the public session. The City Council will convene to consider public matters. Those wishing to address the City Council must submit a completed request to speak form available over by the exit sign over there. So there's some forms that you can fill out if you wish to speak on an agenda item or a non-agenda item. And at this time, I'm going to call up to the podium, the mic here, Pastor Matt Parmalee, Pastor and Director of Campus Operations at Saddleback Church, to lead us in invocation. Thank you for being here tonight.
Mr. Mayor, thank you on behalf of Saddleback Church and the entire City Council for this privilege to bring tonight's invocation. Let us pray. Almighty God, our Father, we thank you for all who are gathered here today. Thank you for your many and bountiful blessings. Thank you for your life itself and for the friendships and family we have. For all we have comes from you, belongs to you, and exists because of you. Jesus, we thank you for your love, mercy, and compassion. Give to Mayor Dwight Robinson the wisdom to lead with humility, the courage to lead with integrity, and the compassion to lead with generosity. Bless and protect his family, the City Council members, and their families. I ask that you would give this council wisdom to make the decisions in the midst of the conflicting issues we face today. Grant them a true sense of the needs of the people of Lake Forest. Please give them the ability to work together in harmony, and also give them personal peace in their lives and joy in what they do. I pray for the agenda that is set tonight before them. Please give an assurance of what would please you and benefit those who live in our wonderful city of Lake Forest. It is in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very blessed to have Saddleback Church in our city.
Absolutely. All right. Well, on the agenda, it's for me to lead the Pledge of Allegiance, but as is custom for us, we have some Boy Scouts that are in uniform, so I've asked them previously if they'd come to the podium, the mic here, and lead us in the pledge, so appreciate you three doing that. Thank you very much. And what troop are you with? Which troop are you with, guys?
It's Troop 639.
Troop 639, okay. And so, hey, just one of you can come to the mic there. So.
Okay. Audience, please rise. Please put your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that. All right. Mr. City Attorney, was there any reportable action at the closed session?
Mayor and Council, there's no reportable action taken.
Okay. This is going to bring us to one of the public comments portions of the agenda. At this time, members of the public may address the City Council regarding any items within the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council. No action may be taken on items not listed on the agenda unless authorized by law. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes per person and an overall time limit of 30 minutes for the public comments portion of the agenda. Any person wishing to address the City Council on any matter, whether or not it appears on the agenda, is requested to complete a request to speak form over by the exit sign over there. The completed form is to be submitted to the City Clerk prior to an individual being heard by the City Council. Whenever possible, lengthy testimony should be presented to the City Council in writing with 8 copies, and only pertinent points presented orally. Additionally, a request to register written comments form is available over at that table as well, next to the exit sign. So do we have any public comments on non-agenda items tonight?
Yeah. Marcia Rudolph, followed by Eric Gerritsen.
Good evening, one and all. I see that you've all survived the signing in of the silly season. Hopefully we will be as well feeling at the end of things. Vector Control has a critter that looks like it's more serious than it is, and it's this big-headed ant. The big-headed ant was originally, or was just recently found in Costa Mesa. They're watching it. It's a big-headed ant, but it doesn't sting and it doesn't bite. so we don't have to worry too much about it, except that it does, when we get these invasive species, they tend to take over what the original species were supposed to occupy. So that's why we'll be getting some updated information on the big-headed ant as time goes on. And just a quick reference, a quick reminder, don't forget to make sure that any puddles or small areas that have water gathered in them are taken care of, because that's where we end up having the mosquitoes that are scary, do hurt when they bite, and can cause all kinds of horrible things. So watch out for the puddles, and onward and upward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, could I ask?
Briefly, yes.
Excuse me. Mrs. Rudolph? Could you come back to the mic for a moment, please? Thank you. Two things. Number one, thanks for giving your report. One of our Eagle Scouts that obtained his Eagle Scout on his 18th birthday, he used your report on Vector for one of the portions that he needed to complete his Eagle Scout. So I promised him I would let you know that publicly. Second of all, I've heard of a worm, a big long worm that is in San Bernardino County that crawls in and it goes into your plants and eat them from the roots. Because we do have people that work here or go there, could you please have Vector Control check on it and see if there's any threat to our county, because it's being transported by people that's going from one place to another. And it even gets in your house plants. It can sliver itself out flat, come under the slightest crack, and come in and eat your plants. So I'm hoping that next time you come, you could bring us an update on that. Thank you.
I will definitely check. I have a meeting on Thursday, and I will ask for information on it. Thank you.
Eric Garrettson, followed by Stan Yombo.
Good evening. Today I dropped off my proposal. It should be in your inbox. I really hope you go through all of the reference material that I provided. This proposal for the Medical Marijuana Collective is very important to me for a lot of reasons, but this will allow me to once again become a productive member of society instead of just a disabled person sitting at home. Thank you for your time. Look, I do request 30 days notice because I have doctors that are going to be coming that need to change their schedule, so 20 to 30 day notice before the proposal's voted on, if possible.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Stan Yombo, followed by Jim Reichert.
Good evening, Mayor, Council Member. My name is Stan Yumbo. I go with the name Yumbo. I'm the General Manager of the Prominence Hotel and Suites by Lake Forest and the Regency Dimension. So, last week we had a group of people in my hotel that literally ran an operation of making fake money and bagging marijuana. So I kind of confronted them, and they left really quick. And they left behind actually copies of money and box of marijuana, pipes, and everything. I'm going to thank actually Deputy Torres who came and helped me. Basically, I'm here because I want a partnership between hotels and the deputies. I did it with Los Angeles Sheriff deputies, where each quarter we met with the sheriff to talk about safety and security. Basically, it's going to be more about how to identify suspects or to interact with them. You'll be also to know exactly, I don't want to say profiling, that would be a little hard to say, but yes, I think it's very important to know how those people act or react. I mean, we have put a lot of policies in my hotel where we try to avoid a lot of cash handling, but it would be great to sit with Sheriff Department to know how to handle those cash, or how to put them here, or let's say if someone is with a gun, what to do to avoid any crime. So my purpose is just to make sure that we share the same information with the sheriff. They can tell us exactly what's going on in the area, because I knew the Days Inn and the Best Western, they used to have a lot of problems because of some activities that was not great. So pretty much that's what it is. My participation will be, I would volunteer to have my premises actually for those kind of meeting, which it can be like twice a year or once every quarter. So it will be great. You will help a lot of people because my employees were really shaken up. The same kind of people, the same group of people, literally, I think I gave a copy to Madam Clerk. They left this copy in my hotel, which I was very wary because not only I run a business here in the Lake Forest, I'm also a resident of Lake Forest. So that copy kind of disturbed me a little bit. Sometimes I walk at night with my wife. What can happen if someone like that meet me on the street? I mean, I'm a big guy. I can defend myself. But I just want to make sure, actually, everybody's safe in Lake Forest because I'm a resident of Lake Forest. I want to keep us safe for everybody. I don't want one group to hate another group. I think my purpose choosing Lake Forest because I live in Koreatown in L.A. I've seen a lot of stuff, and Lake Forest was very appealing to me, and I intend to stay here and be a real long-term resident. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Actually, we've had no more requests. The previous speaker is actually speaking on an agendized item.
Okay, great. So that's going to bring us to the consent calendar, warrant register item number 4. All matters listed under the warrant register are considered routine and will be enacted by one vote. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless members of the City Council, the public, or the staff request specific items be removed from the warrant register for separate action. Do we have any requests from the public on the warrant register?
We've had no requests.
Okay. Council members, anything you want to pull from the warrant register?
Move approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Council members, cast your votes. Item 4 passes unanimously. That brings to the consent calendar miscellaneous items numbers 5 through 17. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered routine and will be enacted by one vote. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless members of the City Council, the public, or the staff request specific items be removed from the consent calendar for separate action. Now, before we do that, item 14, I spoke with the city manager earlier. Since we're talking about traffic later on with discussion items, we're going to move item 14 to right before item number 20. So, and have we had some requests from the public to pull other items?
Well, the staff moving of item 14,
Okay,
and I do have some requests to speak as well.
Okay,
So
fantastic.
that was it. No other ones.
Okay. And any items specifically that the public's wished to pull so far?
No, no other,
Sorry.
no other requests.
Oh, no one. Okay. Council, any items that you want to pull from the consent calendar?
Item 10.
Item 10?
Yeah, item 13.
Item 10 and 13. Anything else? Okay, I'll entertain a motion on the balance.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second on the balance. So that's everything excluding items 10, 13, and 14. Council members, cast your votes. Those items pass unanimously.
Agenda item 10, monthly treasurer's report, July 2014, submitted by Director of Finance, City Treasurer, and removed from the consent calendar by Councilmember Bass.
Okay, 2 items that I want to discuss relative to this. One, just an observation. The last paragraph on the cover page, page 67 of the agenda, it says that the portfolio balance increased by $2.1 million, and then the next sentence says the decrease resulted primarily. Looking at the backup material to it, it was actually an increase, and so it's just a little confusing how it's written. And then the other item I wanted to mention is that since we're looking at this, is that maybe the have staff look at the possibility of using outside consultants and contractors to manage the fund. I know it's a big effort to self-manage money, and we might want to look at it. I know it's a low interest rate environment. You know, it might not be beneficial, but I think it's worth looking at some point in time. So I'd like consensus to put that on a future agenda.
Okay. Councilman Bass is asking for consensus from someone to put on a future agenda, potentially having a consultant help with.
Yeah, there's some firms out there that do that kind of portfolio management.
I'd like to check with staff first and see if that is a need or if we're having an issue with handling it. I'd like for the city manager to, before I would take and second that, I'd like for the city manager to look into that and get back to us, put it in an update, and get back to us. And if you could wait and bring it up next time, I would be willing to support, depending on the outcome of the update.
Sure, that's okay.
And
City manager?
Unless you want to respond at this point.
Mr. Members of the council, the staff actually has looked at the possibility of doing that already on our own accord. But clearly, in the instance that the council wants to put it on a public agenda, I think the staff could support that at this juncture.
okay.
Then I'll second it.
I'll second that too.
Okay. Well, you just need
You'll
one
third
other.
it. I second it.
You just need one other for consensus. So, okay. All right. Any other comments regarding item 10?
Move approval.
Second.
Okay. Motion and a second on item 10. Council members, cast your votes. Item passed unanimously.
Agenda item 13, contract award to Signage Incorporated for the Sports Park Technology Infrastructure Project, submitted by Deputy City Manager, Director of Management Services, and removed from the consent calendar by Councilmember Voigts.
Before us, we have the completion nearing of our sports park, and this is actually to set up the high Wi-Fi and stuff for the sports park. But I'm just wondering, since we're on this subject, I thought that maybe it would be a good time to bring up how Signage is doing with their city. It's newly, and we've never discussed that, so this is on the agenda, so I thought I'd bring that up. And then also, was there not time to go out to RFP for the $70,000 on this one?
Mr. Member of the council, I'll defer to Ms. Rose on both those accounts, since she's the one who manages the account.
Mayor and members of the City Council, in response to your first question, how has Signage performed over the past year, we think they've performed quite well. We did do a statistic. I actually gave it to the city manager as part of my performance evaluation, talking about how the number of tickets that we had on average for a 6-month period during our Signage contract was higher than what we're experiencing now. And I'd be happy to give you that exact number in the update this coming week, because I do have that stat. I just don't have it off the top of my head. But for the most part, our projects are being completed. Our day-to-day IT support is going quite well, and I think the feedback from staff has been very positive. But our actual help desk tickets have gone down since we've had a full year with Signage.
And do they have an employee here with us?
They do. They have someone that's here. And when we have requests for assistance, he works on that. And when there is no request for assistance, he either does routine network maintenance or he's answering other Signage calls. So we're not paying an hourly rate for him. He's simply stationed here, and it's kind of an on-demand resource. But that's been going very well.
Okay, and so could we as council, maybe in our next package, bring up the significant
Sure.
points of that?
Oh, sure, absolutely.
That review
I'd be happy to
did.
provide that.
And then also, the $70,000 here, was that something that we just got back to the wall, or was it because that?
No, actually, we made a conscious decision to award this contract to Signage. So when we discussed their contract, when we were talking about awarding it, we spent a lot of time talking about network projects. And network projects are those things that improve or maintenance of our IT environment in our data center, adding new technology and monitoring the network. And items that were 16 hours or below were part of our standard contract. Anything over 16 hours, the contract specifically says, would either be a separate contract, or if the city could issue an RFP, and it was really the city's decision. But we anticipated in that scope of services that there would be times we would do a separate contract with them, and we established the rates that we would use in that base contract. Now, the reason we made that decision in this case was we felt that we wanted to maintain our continuity of services. And so for this data center, we really felt like this project was a core IT project. So just like taking care of our data center here, it's switches, it's network cards, it's really core infrastructure. And so we've benefited over the years by having one vendor take care of that for us. And so we felt in this case, this project was really an extension of our existing IT network. And so we wanted to keep that continuity of services by going with Signage. Now, there have been times recently where we analyzed, for other projects, does it make sense to keep it with Signage, or is it the city at an advantage to actually go out and do a competitive proposal? And so in most cases, we've done competitive proposals. So some examples, last fiscal year, we went out for project management services for our EnerGov project. This year, we've had 4 RFPs that we've issued specifically for the sports park and for other IT services that weren't core network, and so we felt like we could have another vendor compete for that, and we would get really good service, and then the ongoing maintenance could be handled by Signage.
Thank you. Move the item.
Second.
There's a motion and a second on the item. If there's no further discussion, council members cast your votes. The item passes unanimously. So the only other item pulled was 14, which will be right before item 20. And so that will bring us to public hearings portion of the agenda. And item 18.
Agenda Item 18, the annual review of development agreements submitted by City Manager.
I'm going to officially open the public hearing on this item, and we'll hear from the staff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. Actually, I'm going to ask Mr. Tomaino to provide you with a brief overview of this item.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. As you know, the City is required to conduct an annual review of its development agreements each year. The process ensures that the development partners have fully complied with the terms and conditions of the agreements. Beginning with the execution of the first DA in 2008, the City has conducted an annual review each year and found that the OSA developers have been in full compliance. As detailed in the agenda report, the past 12 months have been pretty successful for the OSA development partners. Particularly, you'll see a lot of development with Phase 1 of the SBRA development. They've actually accomplished a number of milestones. They pulled 50% of their development permits during the past year and delivered public and private improvements, including its 2 recreation centers and then, of course, the public parks that are now owned by the city. SBRA has also satisfied its affordable housing obligations with the Meta project that you also see under construction. That'll be a total of 189 affordable units as part of that development. As part of the annual review, the staff also, measures the fee escalator based on the ENR cost index for the Los Angeles area, which was calculated this year to be 2.41%, which is an increase and shows improvement actually in the economy. The fee escalator for the affordable housing index was just under 1%. Staff, with the assistance of legal counsel, reviewed all the provisions of the development agreements and found the development partners to be in full compliance with the terms and conditions of the agreements. Staff now recommends that the City Council find the OSA development partners, subject to, of course, your review, to be in full compliance with the terms and conditions of the DA. This concludes my presentation on the annual review. If you have any questions, I would be most certainly happy to answer them. Thank you.
Are there any questions from the council specifically with respect to the staff report?
Yes. Are we asking a 30-year or 55-year covenant on that affordable housing?
I believe it's actually Mr. Bellmer.
Mr. Members of the City Council, Mr. Bellmer's telling me that's 30 years based on the development agreement that we had.
I'd like for us to try and work into the agreements going up to 55. Not on this one, but as they come forth, we may want to try and budget up a little bit. County has already went to 55, and that does give us a period of time to get prepared for for completing some other affordable housing the longer we have. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any public comments on this item?
We've had no requests.
Okay, so I'll officially close the public hearing portion and then bring it back to the council for any further discussion, comments, or questions. Councilman Bass?
I have a comment, and I know many of you heard this before on a previous project, but this is on the Madison or Pinnacle project. I note that the report states that, at least it implies that they, and I think it's accurate, very accurate, that they've been delayed because of working with the federal and state resource agencies, and I think that's primarily the Army Corps of Engineers relative to an ephemeral drainage on that area. Now, this is generally a place at the top of Peachwood. There are no streams in that area. The USGS topographical maps, of which the Scouts would be familiar with using, or should become familiar with using, I looked at, there is no blue lines, which would designate a stream, or a dash blue line, which would be an occasional stream. I looked up the definition of an ephemeral stream, and it means a drainage feature that only carries surface runoff in direct response to precipitation. It's only a stream when it rains. In my mind, that would also be a gutter. I don't know that the Army Corps wants to inspect every single storm drain screen that we put on, but certainly could. I personally do not see that it's in the purview of the Army Corps engineers. If you look at their website, their mission statement and their vision is engineering solutions for our nation's toughest challenges. I cannot, by any stretch, see how that is a tough challenge in dealing with places that have become streams only if they get some water. I'm not sure what we can do on that. I know when I brought it up before, the letter went out to our various representatives, and maybe there'll be an appropriate time in which we can deal with it. Thank you.
Mayor.
Councilwoman McCullough?
Just a comment. If we decide to send a letter, make sure we ask that their energy and effort be redirected to our Serrano Creek that is eroding, and they are supposed to be on fixing that. That is a challenge. And also our Aliso Creek, which they are supposed to be fixing, that is also a challenge that they have not gotten fixed over the last 23 years. Thank you.
Just a little update on that. Did take a walk up Serrano Creek Trail one time, and the part above Trabuco, there's actually someone, a consultant that was retained by the city, not by the city, by the county, out taking pictures and doing some, not survey with survey instruments, but with the camera in terms of that area. So,
yeah, he was sent there to report back to the Newport Bay watershed, and he did come back and report, but still we're having problems with the movement of them coming to repair our creek. They have did some Band-Aid repairs, but they have not did some serious repairs. If you look in the records, or if you want any, I'm on that committee,
right,
you will see that the Aldenwood homes are still in danger. If we have the rain that is anticipated,
Mayor,
they're in danger of sliding.
I just want to say,
And cross
sorry, I
over.
want to say on the
Thank you.
topics of
Yeah.
development agreements,
yeah.
not straight too far.
Okay. So any other comments or questions with respect to the development agreements? Okay, seeing none, then I'll entertain a motion on the
So moved.
item.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Council members, cast your votes. Item passed unanimously. Thank you very much for the report. We appreciate that. I did close, yeah.
Agenda item 19, zoning code amendment 6-14-4507, an ordinance amending Title 5 and Title 9 of the Lake Forest Municipal Code relating to promotional signs, temporary outdoor promotions, and live entertainment, submitted by Director of Development Services.
And I'll officially open the public hearing for item 19. Go to the staff for a report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, and I will defer to Ms. Ackerman, who will provide the staff report on this item.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and council members. We just have a brief presentation to outline the proposed amendments to the city's signage and live entertainment provisions. As background, this work effort was developed in response to feedback received from the business community and specific direction from the City Council to look at changes to these regulations. Over the past year, we've had a series of workshops and public meetings with both the Planning Commission and the City Council, and we've come back to you from time to time kind of giving updates as to what we're working on and what areas we're focusing on to increase signage opportunities. Our goals of the project, obviously, to expand advertising and promotional opportunities for the business community, but to still maintain the city's aesthetic image and to ensure that the signs that we allow do not affect public health, safety, or welfare. As an overview, in our report we outlined 4 types of signage that we're looking at, commonly used by business: temporary signage, that's banners; window signage; a category we call temporary outdoor promotion permits, TOPPs, that's the jargon, and these are actually outdoor events that can be held by businesses, and it's a time where they can take merchandise outside of their store and put it in their storefront, or perhaps use an area of the parking lot. That's their way to have an event that's on the outside. And lastly, we looked at live entertainment, specifically provisions to allow for outdoor entertainment. So for temporary signs, our first category was wall banners. These are widely used by the business community right now. So what the ordinance will do is increase the length of display. Currently, we have 60 days. That's 2 30-day periods they could keep a banner up, and that will be increased to 120 days. There's a proposed increase in the size of the banner. Currently, it's 50 square feet, regardless of the size of your suite, and we have a sliding scale depending on how large it is. The banner could go up to 100 square feet. We're also proposing an increase in the number of banners that could be used by a business, depending on where they're located in the center and if they have frontage, perhaps on a parking lot on one side and on the street on the other. So you could have up to 2 banners. A new category under temporary signage, we've added a flag banner, and we have an example here on the screen. So these we're starting to see being used, and it's an alternative. It can be placed outside the building, serves the same purpose as a banner. It's relatively inexpensive, but you don't have to get a ladder. It's a little bit easier to install. And so this could be used with the same standards that we allow for banners. A brand new type of sign is the storefront signboard, which we also have a picture here. This type of sign does not require a permit, and we'd actually allow each retail business to have a storefront sign. It's really a pedestrian-oriented sign that someone walking along could read. There are restrictions on the size. They're a very small scale sign, but it could advertise a special or show the menu or something that's really geared for someone walking in front of the stores. Window signage, something we've heard a lot about from the business community. Our current code is very restrictive on window signage. And so the proposal is to increase window signage based on an allowance of 25% of the total window area per building elevation. We have a number of features in the ordinance that regulate the maintenance and the location and other features, but this is an example of the type of window signage you might see. The outdoor promotions, or the TOPPs, as I described earlier, this ordinance would increase the number of events that each business could have per year. Currently, the event can last for 10 days, and we allow 4 events per year, and the new ordinance would allow 6 permits, so that would increase the number of events. We've also proposed an increase in the number and size of signs. Previously, our current code is very restrictive on what you can do. You can have your merchandise outside, but with very little signage. We've included standards to regulate the placement and location of any signage used at a TOPP. And I think the key piece on this is that the signage has to be there within the area of the TOPP. You can't put a sign out in the public right-of-way or at the entrance to the shopping center. We allow more signage, but it's there at the site of the event. We've also expanded the list of allowable signage types. As I mentioned, we were very restrictive in the past. So we have an example here of some of the new types of signs that can be used inside the event area. The flag banners, freestanding banners, kiosk signs, some inflatables, different things to make it a little more festive. And as I mentioned, there is a restriction on where you can put the sign. So it makes the event itself more festive, but the signage isn't carried out to the street. You'll see here we have a cow. This would be in a category of a human sign, and the regulations would now allow this type of signage just inside your TOPP. So we wouldn't be seeing this signage out on the public right-of-way or on a freeway overpass, but it could give some liveliness, like a character there within the event. And our fourth category, as I mentioned, live entertainment. The proposed ordinance would allow outdoor entertainment subject to the entertainment permit that we currently have in Title V. We do have some restrictions on the hours the entertainment can be offered. It has to be located 300 feet away from residents and have a maximum capacity of 125 people. Also, we're requiring the speakers to be oriented towards the business, and the live entertainment has to be located in an area that's controlled by the business, a patio, a courtyard, something like that. Live entertainment must comply with the city's noise ordinance. We're not proposing to alter that. But this would give a new opportunity for outdoor entertainment in areas of the city. So in summary, we were presenting a comprehensive package of modifications to the city's signage and live entertainment regulations designed to increase promotional activities while still maintaining the city's aesthetics. If the council adopts the proposed modifications, the new regulations would be in effect in October of this year. And with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right. Are there any questions with respect to the staff report itself?
I was in another neighboring city not too long ago, and they were discussing proposing changes, and one of the changes they came up with that city was they're called box lights in front of for window frontage. Is that included in any of our thing? Have you looked into that? It's called box lighting.
No, that's not included in the ordinance, and we haven't discussed that with the commission or really defined it or looked at examples for that.
If I get something to you, is that something we could look into if this is the first reading?
Well, let's save that for after public comment here. So, any questions with respect to the staff report? We good? Okay, any public comments?
We've had no requests.
Okay, then I'll officially close the public hearing, and then now we can talk about the rest of that. So. Yes.
The new A-frames that are allowed, I think that's going to be a great plus to our restaurants and many of our businesses, because I spent the week before last in Sacramento. As you walk through Sacramento on C Street and stuff, many of the restaurants have little A-frames out in front, inviting with the menus and stuff out there. I think it's very inviting for the people to come in when they see those. It's pedestrian friendly. San Diego, downtown, the gas lamp has many of those too. So it's something that I think would be a great asset to the community and the businesses of our community. So I'm very pleased to see that is. But this box lighting thing is something that, since we're in the change of this, I'd like to maybe look into the box lights.
Mr. Member, City Council, if you want to change any portion of this, it's likely you would have to go back to the commission, but if it's in between readings, you'd have to go back to first reading again. If you want to move this action tonight, then you might want to consider that at a future amendment. I'm not sure if the staff has had the opportunity to evaluate what that might mean. So I guess my suggestion is that if you like the changes you see, you might want to go ahead and move that through. If there's additional things you want us to look at, then give the staff the time to look at it and then go back to the commission and maybe come back to you again.
That'd be okay. We could do that and bring it back or add that later. But what about vinyl windows, like the advertising of Guitar Center is a perfect example. They have the new windows, their posters up in the front that are laminated.
That's under a different section of the ordinance. That's called a window graphic. That's not what this ordinance addresses is just window signage. So different concepts. There's already a process for that. The Planning Commission approved the Guitar Center application.
So that's something that is okay. Thank you.
Councilwoman McCullough.
Thank you, Mayor. Mrs. Ackerman, I want to address this to you because I know that we addressed it last time, and I didn't really see it in the report. I may have overlooked it. When we were talking about the outdoor entertainment, I purposely asked about, like, in our shopping centers, like where Pepinos, they like to have entertainment, and there may be a place right there. Have we arranged something in there? I may have missed it, but I didn't see anything in there where there'll be two going on at the same time in the same center that could cause a problem there.
Council members, that is, we have a requirement that the out permit, the request for the live entertainment be approved by the property manager.
By the property.
Yeah. So we'll leave them to decide who has priority and who can apply and arrange a schedule, and we can handle the permitting aspect.
Yeah. I just want to make sure we're not clashing because this is a first round and we want to make sure we get it right the first time. Thank you.
Councilman Bass.
With respect to Shop and Dine, I know it doesn't impact this year because Shop and Dine will occur before this is effective. But in future years, how is this impacting Shop and Dine? Like, do the days that we have that account, and is there banner days or permit days or whatever, advertising days?
No, currently, Shop and Dine is not, is more a citywide promotion, and we're part of that, so we don't subtract any of their time or take away from that, nor do we require that they get a banner permit if they're participating in that program.
Okay, thank you. Great.
Gail, excellent work. It took almost a year and a half to get here. You did it thoroughly. It was impressive. I remember Dwight and I, Mayor Robinson and I, were talking about this a couple of years ago, give or take this time frame, a couple of years ago, mid-2012, when Mr. Robinson and I talked about this. A year and a half after we get sworn in, it's going in, but it is going in very thorough, beautifully put together, very, very comprehensive. My utmost gratitude to you and to everyone who helped you, directed you, assisted you. Thank you, all of you.
And I'd just like to echo those statements. I'm very appreciative of the time that was put in to put this ordinance in place and provide the businesses more opportunity to promote themselves. So thank you very much. I want to make sure that it's not like a tree falling in the forest and no one's there to hear it. So I really hope that from the economic development side that we can really work with businesses to help them understand how these changes can benefit them truly. I don't want it to just end up as words in the code, but you know, that it's the opportunity for businesses to actually act on it and for them to continue to grow and prosper. So if there's no further discussion, well, Councilmember Voigts.
Since it was actually my bringing this to the council's attention, and it was basically a concern because of the outdoor music that was not allowed at Pepino's Foothill Ranch. It's kind of brought this whole subject up, and then that advent of the missing of the A-frame signs throughout our city is something that was brought to the attention of me when I was mayor last year. Joey Moscatello with Pepino's is very appreciative of the city's new live music, and I think the people of the community really very appreciative of that. So I'd like to thank the staff too, and I echo the words of Mayor Pro Tem and Mayor. You did a great job, marvelous job, and thank you so much. And I think that the business community is very appreciative of your work too. Thank you. With that, move the item.
Okay, there's a motion on the item, motion and a second. So seeing no further discussion, council members cast your votes. And item 19 passes unanimously. Now that's going to bring us to item 14, which was on the consent, but now is into the discussion portion of the agenda.
Agenda item 14, Lake Forest Transportation Mitigation Program, 5-year review, submitted by Director of Public Works, City Engineer.
And I understand just from speaking before that we might have a brief staff report here.
Yes, we do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, and I will defer to Mr. Wheeler for a brief presentation on this item.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. This is a great opportunity to just talk about the traffic and what we do here, and in particular the LIFTM program. The city created the LIFTM program, in 2008 as really a way to ensure that the developers are paying their fair share for their traffic impacts for the OSA development. Even though the OSA reduced traffic overall by about 50% from what was originally planned in the general plan in that area, there's still some projects that need to be done and need to be built and needed to be mitigated, and this is a way of developers paying for those improvements. So it really starts with, and the key is the traffic model. So it starts with OCTA's traffic model. That's called OCTAM. And the city uses that, and that model models the entire county's transportation system. It's tied in with the surrounding counties in Southern California. And all the cities in Orange County use that model. So we take that model, and then we hire the same consultant that OCTA uses for their modeling, Stantec, and create LIFTM, our Lake Forest Traffic Analysis Model. So that model is something that we can use. It's more detailed than the overall regional model of OCTAM. But it takes into account all the regional development, the Great Park development, Mission Viejo, Laguna Hills. It's intended to model what the build-out of Lake Forest will look like. We understand what those traffic models, we take that out to the year 2030. It's calibrated on actual traffic counts. We go out there, do the actual traffic counts, calibrate the model based on that. Then it's extrapolated to 2030. The model's reviewed and certified by OCTA. And in the model, we look at 45 major intersections throughout the city, and some actually outside of the city. We look at the level of service at each and every turning movement, every left turn movement, every right turn movement, every through traffic movement at those models, or at those intersections, to determine if we need to mitigate anything and what project we would need from that. So every 5 years, the city formally updates the model. That's what we're here to do tonight. In addition to that, the city updated it in 2011, did a baseline adjustment based on what we were now learning, or at that time learned about the Baker Ranch development, the largest of the OSA developments. Also, in addition to that, each new development gets added into the model, so we don't just wait 5 years to update it. As it comes in, the model's updated based on new land use changes or proposed developments. As they get approved, that goes into the model, and then every 5 years, we look at the all the other inputs, the fees, the traffic model, the land uses in a formal manner is what we want to do. So with that, the consultant found that no changes in the improvements are required at this time. With this result, the fee adjustments occur automatically each year. They're tied to the California Highway Construction Cost Index. Therefore, no city council actions required at this time. So staff would recommend that the council receive and file this report, and we're certainly available for any questions that you may have.
Great. And do we have some public comment on the item?
Jim Reichert, followed by Jim Gardner.
Hello, everyone. Jim Reichert, Lake Forest resident. As you know, I've written you quite a few letters about the LFTM. It's one of my favorite subjects. And I wanted to point out to you on page 21, at the bottom it says, on table 5, the 2030 peak hour intersection capacity utilizations, values for each location, blah, 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 blah. 8 of the study area intersections do not meet the minimum requirements in 2030, even with these improvements we're talking about. And if you look at table 5, that lists 42 intersections, we have 3 that are category F, which means failed, 3 E's, and 11 D's. And I know you guys previously decided that D is okay, but to me, D ratings are not very good. So I think we should try to do better. I don't think we should accept that in 2030 we're going to have this many intersections performing so poorly. Let me give you an example. If you look at table 7, which is item number 22. No, excuse me, hard to read these small print. 23, Lake Forest and Geronimo. We're going to add a de facto eastbound right turn lane. That means from Lake Forest going towards the junior high school. But that's not the problem with that intersection. The problem with that intersection is from the high school to Lake Forest. Why don't we add a right turn lane there from Geronimo onto Lake Forest? That's where the traffic backs up in the peak hours. And I put this in a couple of my letters, my tables, but it just doesn't seem to matter. Nothing changes. So I'm not happy with this. I don't think you should be. I think we should try to do much better and not accept E's, D's, and F's in our future plan. Thanks.
Thank you.
Jim Gardner.
Good evening. My name is Jim Gardner. I live in Lake Forest. I obviously agree. I think everybody would agree with what Jim has said. We don't want to accept C's, D's, and E's. But beyond that, my dad used to say that if all you have is a hammer, then everything's going to look like a nail. We're about to lift them up. Yeah, lift them. The drag is going to be basically $10 million spent tinkering with intersections. That's our plan for dealing with traffic. We're going to tinker with intersections. $10 million we're going to tinker. We already know right now traffic is bad. When True North, the same people who do our survey here, did 10 other cities, our city had more people unhappy with traffic than any of the other 10 cities they've done recently. And those of us who live here, we all know traffic is bad. Today, traffic is bad. We're about to add 5,000 new homes, 12,000 new people, 42,000 new vehicle trips per day, and we're tinkering with intersections. Now, what's wrong with tinkering with intersections? Intersections are an extremely fragile way of dealing with the traffic problem. Why is that? Because the best traffic synchronization and intersections, etc., falls dead as soon as a person comes up and presses the walk button. As soon as somebody from a side street wants to get in there, all your traffic synchronization and your intersection tinkering begins to look not so good. Now, obviously, I'm not against tinkering with the intersections. That needs to be done. And there are some intersections that aren't in those 15 that need to be done. But let's look at some other things. Let's look at other ways. Let's not only devote our millions and millions of dollars to tinkering with the intersections and the traffic synchronizations. What's the best example of that? Example I've harped on many times before, and that's El Toro. El Toro has got traffic congestions because it's got dead-end roads, and thousands of people have no way to get to their home except to go into Lake Forest, into El Toro Drive. And that's Raymond. Or the library and the post office. You could not, if you wanted to design a worse street, you couldn't do a worse job than to design that. So why aren't we talking about ways to alleviate the traffic that way? Let me give you another example. What are we doing? Why on earth are we putting a natural gas station in the most strategic and congested intersection in the entire city with a feed out onto El Toro? Who came up with that idea? That's even crazier than the dead ends. Anyhow, the point I'm trying to make is there are many other ways to skin the cat than simply tinkering with the intersections and the traffic synchronization. I have nothing against this report. It's a good half of a report, but where's the other half? Thank you.
We've had no further requests.
All right. Bring it back to the council for comments or questions. Councilman Bass.
Yeah, on this update, was there any use of actual traffic counts to correlate with projections or estimates in the report? Or i.e., was the data validated in some way?
Yes, so it's based on actual traffic counts, and we actually updated the counts after we opened Alton Parkway to account for that opening, and then that's how the consultant will calibrate the model.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, I did have one other question, sorry. That is, I hear, and I don't know, I'm not a traffic engineer, but that somehow there's less traffic for a residential project than a commercial or industrial project, or I guess what we call industrial, which is those tilt-up buildings that are really more office.
Correct. So in the original LIFTM program, or before LIFTM, before the OSA, the OSA areas was mostly industrial and commercial because of the flight path to El Toro Airport. So that average daily traffic was modeled at 152,000 ADT. With the residential going in instead, which generates less traffic, different directions, so you have to account for that, so things change, but a lot less traffic. That plan was for 72,000. So that dropped about 80,000 trips per day off the city system by doing those things.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Voigts.
Yeah, and maybe it's an observation from other cities, but I've been driving in North County quite a bit, and as you're approaching the freeways on Main Arterial, they have the lanes that you're going into that will be on-ramps to the freeway. So like if you're going westbound on El Toro Road towards the freeway at Rockfield, they'd have a sign that these two lanes are going to the freeway. Have we ever looked at any of that on Lake Forest Drive or that? Because, as the congestion gets to the freeway, people kind of get stuck in that lane going on the freeway. And I think that if there was a warning at Rockfield that those lanes are going towards the freeway, I think that might be something that might deter some of that congestion right there at the freeway at Lake Forest on the on-ramp and El Toro Road. And we could do that at the intersection of Rockfield and Lake Forest and Rockfield and El Toro. They have it at Laguna Niguel. They have it up in Anaheim. And it's just kind of a forewarner to get into the right lane, get out of that lane if you're not going on the freeway, or to get in that lane, and so you don't get stuck going on that. Because I've seen a lot of people to where they're almost at the on-ramp and then trying to get out of there. And so you might look into that, and that Sis just said. That's it.
All right. Councilwoman McCullough.
While you're looking into that, if you look from Rockfield to the actual freeway, you have 3 lanes presently, well, really 4 when you count Bridger the street. You have 4 feeding into that. Now, when the natural gas filling station open, that's going to be a 5th one. So while you're looking into it, you're going to have to tweak something, because they're planning on using that little way that the bank used to use for a drive-through. That's now Chase Bank. So then you're going to go back to having 4 plus the new one, which is going to be 5. So that's going to be a congestion. You can put all the signs up you want, but with that much traffic feeding in, you're going to have to get real creative.
Sure, thank you. If I may, OCTA is heading up a study right now that's in the preliminary report stage for that entire intersection. As you know, it's a huge intersection, always has been, always a lot of traffic. We're looking at some more studies to do and different alternatives of how to improve that intersection. These are huge projects, 50 million plus type of projects to look at that, but we're studying that right now.
Mayor, this is the ideal time for us to weigh in. Remember, they're going to extend that freeway 2 more lanes on this side and 2 more lanes on the other side. So that intersection has always been a depressed intersection. But we're talking about some heavy impact, and that U-turn that we put in up there, that's not really working. We did have a motor cop over there for them to stop making the right turn. It still holds up traffic. We may have to put the motor cop back over there because they will turn right, and that blocks the traffic up. That blocks it all the way back up to the ball, and so that's a problem. So with those 2 lanes being added, we're going to need to get something real creative in order to fix that, because it's always been a problem, but now it's going to really be an impact problem. Thank you, Mayor.
Absolutely. first and foremost, I'd like to thank you for what I consider to be a very good report. Read through it, and it's incredibly detailed. The counts were very informative. Just about every major intersection, every potential direction you could go, counts were there. It was appreciate you putting like 4 or 5 of them on a page that I didn't have to have a. Well, it's all on the iPad anyway, but very, very informative, good information. I agree with some of the comments that are being made that, to a certain extent, we are kind of tinkering, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that we're a built-out city. Most of Southern California is built out, so you want to build freeways. Sometimes you have to take out businesses or homes if you want to expand a freeway. If you want to expand roads in a built-out town, sometimes you'd have to do something like that. And you're talking about those 50 million plus projects that you're talking about that are extremely difficult to do. They're not resident friendly, and they're very, very expensive. So I appreciate what we're trying to accomplish with the resources and the ability that we have. I think that we're doing an adequate job, but I also would agree with some of the comments that were made that, it's D's, I don't know where the letter E and letter grades come from, but D's, E's, and F's, are never positives. And, but I know that you're not just a member of the staff here, but also a resident, so I know that this is very important to you as well. You have to live it 24 hours a day, essentially. So, but you had your hand up, so you have a comment.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I should have addressed this comment earlier. So Table 5, which Mr. Reichert had referred to, this is the analysis before the improvements.
Okay.
So this is the analysis that tells us, hey, these are the intersections we have to go improve.
Sure.
So these are this is how we determine them. So we notice that, hey, they're a level of service F, therefore, we need to lift them. We create the improvement that we need to do, we fix it to our level of service that's acceptable, and that's 80% capacity of any intersection is what we designed for.
Yeah. And I know in general that, well, I shouldn't say I know in general, but I've heard from some of my colleagues in other cities that D tends to be acceptable level of service, at least in Orange County. So, I know that is frustrating. We all want to get to a point that's better, but also understanding the limited options that we have, that, using eminent domain to take somebody's house so that the rest of us can, get to a restaurant 3 minutes quicker is going to cause a lot of strife in a community. So no question about that. But you want to respond to the D level?
I would just say it's unfortunate that whoever back in the day invented the A, B, C, D, E, F level, the F for failure, that makes sense, but it's not completely applicable to when we went to school.
Okay.
What we designed for is an 80% capacity level for an intersection. So you have a given intersection. At the peak hour of the intersection, we want it ideally to be 80% full. That gives us 10% leeway, gets into and I wish I had my data here, but we can talk about this later, but that gives us the 10% leeway and then another 10% before we get to F. So it gives us that 20%. You can fall into the E category. City of Irvine designs for level of service E. So that's getting it to the 90% capacity of an intersection at the very peak hour of it. Again, you still have excess capacity. There's congestion. There's cars around you, but you're clearing through the queues. You're making it through. It might be a little frustrating at times because there's traffic, but you're clearing through the queues. The flip side, if you start designing for levels of service of A and B, which is wonderful, you're taking somebody's home. You're widening extra lanes. So that's the balance that we have to do, and that's where the city of Lake Forest and most cities fall in that 80% capacity, which is, level of service D. So it sounds, I believe, worse because of the letters than it really is in terms of capacity.
And, when you mentioned, a lot of cities, so how do we compare with, I know that we all want the most smooth drive that we can possibly have, but how do we compare with our neighbors, I guess, just so that we can put it into perspective? I mean, do you have some data to pull from? Are we kind of within range of them? Or are we worse or better? Or?
I think the data really is anecdotal. I mean, you have to look at levels of service on each and every intersection at each roadway. I don't know offhand. On occasion, OCTA, at least they used to publish, the worst 100 intersections in terms of congestion and things of that nature. I don't know of any data or studies offhand. Just anecdotally, I think we're doing okay, and we got to stay diligent in what we're doing. It's certainly, we have a plan in place, we have funding in place to meet our design threshold, what we design towards, and what our standards are.
And I feel that we're very fortunate from that perspective because, in this current environment, most cities don't have the budget to spend on pretty significant projects, so we've been able to work with the developers, again, using the comment that you provided with to Councilmember Bass, and you stated in your initial staff report that the land use that they could have developed using to create office, industrial, commercial, whatever it might have been, would have been caused significantly more traffic than the residential model that they ended up going forward with when we made the zone changes a few years ago. And so, from that perspective, it could have been a lot worse, and we wouldn't have had the funding sources to do some of the projects that we're doing now. We would have had to spread those out using general fund dollars for a significant period of time, and a lot of the synchronization projects, some of the lane striping and right turn lanes and things like that wouldn't have been able to happen without that funding. And so, that's one of the things I was encouraged by, and it's not that I'm oblivious to it. We're voting on it, almost it seems like every other meeting on a synchronization project that we're coordinating with Irvine or Mission Viejo or something of that nature. But, I know that we're putting a tremendous effort towards this, and I know that some might be frustrated that it seems like we're tinkering, and I can understand that, but I think that we're doing the best with the resources that we have, and that we'll continue to look for those creative solutions. And I'm also encouraged by the fact that there's also changing patterns that occur just almost environmentally. So one thing is with this new development, I've been encouraging all the developers to make sure that they market to the businesses here in town, so that, I've said it before, but if you're a product manager at Oakley, you might want to have a house in Lake Forest where you can ride your mountain bike to Oakley, because you just love being in that type of environment. And so, providing that workforce housing is incredibly important for our community, and, having that right balance. And that's something that, I know that we argue about, but, as we try to strike that balance, there's that opportunity to alleviate traffic in other ways. And, I'm also hopeful that in the future that, there'll be more opportunities for people to work from home, and, more of those types of environmental factors that really have nothing to do with us, but will improve each and every one of our lives. So it's there's nothing that I can physically do to make that happen, but, I'm definitely optimistic, to say the least. So, Councilwoman McCullough?
You asked the staff something that may have not been taken into the equation. The two-lane widening on the I-5 from Avery, a little past El Toro Road, is not to help us. And you were talking about if there are any other examples of a street problem that is worse than ours. We were the worst, and that's why we got a large hunk of Measure M1 funds and federal funds and state funds to do what we have done to El Toro Road. But this widening that we have now is because Avery is now the one that is the worst. And even though we feel ours is bad, and so they've got the money, and OTCA is putting money in there, and everybody but that two-lane widening is not for our city. It's because Avery was after we have upgraded ours or tweaked it or whatever somewhat, Avery is now the one that is the most depressed area. And that widening is not for our city, it is for Avery. And that's why we're going to have that impact. And they're not going to take homes, but it is going to impact our city in a very powerful way that's going to cause us some problems. And we don't have the money to fix the increased problems that it's going to cause, and there's not a pot out there yet. So our staff is going to have to keep their eyes and ears open, hoping that we can find a pot, and then if we find the pot, how we can tweak and fix it because they're impacting it more by doing the Avery widening, those two-lane widenings, because Avery is worse than El Toro Road listed right now, and that's why they got the money to do that.
Any other questions or comments from the council?
Perhaps to just bring some light to the situation very quickly, very briefly, and not to take anything away from what Dr. Gardner has said, who has said what he has said beautifully, not to take anything away from what you, Tom, have done, and you've done it beautifully as you always do. I think the problem is in the grading. I think the lettering should follow the lettering mechanism, the lettering scheme that the diamond industry uses. They start with D all the way to Z. So if you get a D, you may know this, you may not, but the diamond industry actually, there is no A, there is no B, there is no C. Things that start with D. If you get D, E, and F, you're actually getting a colorless diamond, and that's good. That's as good as it gets. So I think you need to write somebody in the state of California and just say, hey, just change the lettering, because if A, B, and C are not achievable until 2030 in this lifetime, then why bother with it? Start with D, and then everybody's happy. And call it an A. Thank you.
Okay, on that note, we just need to receive and file, so we don't need to take a vote on this. So if there's no further discussion, then we'll just move on to the next item. Thank you very much for the report. Appreciate it.
Agenda Item 20, Traffic Education Forum Summary Report, submitted by Deputy City Manager, Director of Management Services.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, I'm going to turn this over to Ms. Rose and also Mr. Wheeler for a presentation on the item. Thank you.
Mayor and members of the City Council, in December, the City Council directed staff to develop a series of traffic education forums as part of the city's ongoing efforts to communicate with residents. Tonight, I'd like to provide a brief report on the 3 forums that were held in May, as well as next steps to collect additional feedback to enhance the picture of traffic-related concerns throughout the community. 39 residents attended the 3 forums that were held throughout the city. Each forum had the same format: a presentation by staff that covered community survey results, a history of regional planning and infrastructure projects, signature Lake Forest projects, traffic management in Lake Forest, the science of traffic engineering, and future traffic management projects. After that, attendees were put into breakout groups to answer 3 questions, and a staff member was at each table to copiously take notes of all of that feedback. We collected 136 comments in all, ranging across a broad spectrum of topics. Now, at a high level, the most common answers to the first question that we posed, what is your primary traffic concern, were school-related issues, traffic congestion, and new development. The most common responses for the second question, if the city could fund only one project, what should it be, were reduce traffic congestion, more turn lanes, and address school-related traffic issues. The most common answers to the third question, how could the city improve communication about traffic, were more meetings, in-person communication, more social media, and increase the frequency of our communications. Now, it's important to note that the comments collected are not necessarily representative of the entire Lake Forest population, nor are they intended to be considered conclusive findings, but are a reflection of the attitudes and the opinions of a small sample of individuals within our overall community. But that being said, these comments have been extremely valuable in highlighting areas of concern, especially at the neighborhood level, and areas where the city may be able to take immediate action. And the report describes 7 comments and requests made by attendees, along with action by staff to address those requests, or in some cases, the status of a project that's related to that request. The report also describes traffic improvement projects in the city's 2013-2015 capital improvement projects budget that directly address some of the comments that were raised at the forums. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, these forums are part of the city's ongoing efforts to communicate with the community about traffic issues. So to collect additional input, staff will post a 20-minute video on our website for those who are unable to attend the forum. And it's basically the presentation that we did give at that forum. and will also have an online survey containing the same 3 discussion questions posed at the forum for those who are unable to attend but would like to share their views with the council. These responses, along with the results of the 2014 Resident and Business Satisfaction Survey, will be communicated to the council in a future report in 2015. In conclusion, we believe the forums met their intended objectives. The feedback collected highlighted areas of concern for future study, as well as areas ripe for immediate attention. We are working on collecting additional feedback via the online survey and citywide satisfaction study to enhance the picture of traffic-related concerns throughout our community. To move from the evaluation stage to implementation of findings, we believe providing this information in early 2015 will afford the council an opportunity to integrate any new significant transportation-related projects in priority order with other city projects into updates of the 5-year business plan and 2-year CIP budget set for June of 2015. Now, this concludes my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions. And in addition, Public Works Director Tom Wheeler is also available to answer any technical or project-related questions that you may have.
Great, thank you very much, appreciate that. Do we have some public comments on the item?
Yes, Jim Gardner.
Hi, good evening again. Jim Gardner, Lake Forest. So everything we were just talking about before still applies. You wanted to know how we compare. I thought I told you how we compared. Of the last 10 studies that True North did in Southern California, we have more people in our city upset with traffic than any other city. That's how we compare. They had 39 people at the forums. Only 2 of them had anything positive to say about traffic or about planning. How does that compare? Of the 136 comments made, only 2 of them were positive. So there's a lot wrong with the traffic, which the traffic forum, in fact, proved if you needed to prove that. But why would you need to prove that? You only have to drive down El Toro. You prove that every day. We all know that. Nobody has to prove that. And by the way, talking about the millions of dollars we need to spend and the homes we have to destroy, you can build out Bridger and there's no homes you have to destroy to get Bridger not dead-ending into El Toro. There's no homes you have to destroy to get Raymond not bridging, going into El Toro. There's lots we could do with minimal expenses to avoid that. And again, the CNG thing, that's the craziest thing on earth. Not only are you putting CNG traffic, CNG cars are notoriously slow, they don't have the pickup, you're driving them into El Toro in our worst intersection. Problem number 1. Problem number 2, you're going to get hundreds of new cars coming off the freeway, crowding up that intersection to go into the CNG station. How could you? There's no cost to that. That's just craziness. And that gets down to the point of the forum. A lot of good ideas came out at the forum. I attended 2 of them myself. Probably 10 comments in there are my comments. Jim Reichert, and there were lots of other people in there. I think the problem is there really is no innovative outside-the-box thinking going on here. You hire the same guy to be your consultant for the last 10 or 12 years. He's the Orange County consultant, he's your consultant, he's everybody's consultant. He comes back with the same old tired ideas. And Avery Parkway sucks, and El Toro sucks. Maybe we need a new consultant. Maybe we need some new ideas. That was the idea behind the traffic commission. You didn't want to do a traffic commission. So you wanted to have traffic forums to find out if traffic was bad. Traffic is bad. Okay, now go ahead and order the staff to go ahead with that investigation of the traffic commission. Let's bring new people in. Let's get new ideas, because the ideas we have now just aren't working. I think if anything, you refused the traffic commission. You said, let's have the forums instead. Okay, we had them. They proved traffic's no good. People are not happy with it. Let's go ahead with the traffic commission. As you promised, let's go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comment?
We've had no additional requests.
Okay.
If I may quickly, this is the first time that I'm asking. I think this is the first time that I'm asking to actually address someone who has spoken at the podium. Mr. Gardner, you looked me in the eye right here, and I appreciate that. And you said that I promised the Traffic Commission. Actually, I did not. When I ran, I said that I would think about it. I did not commit to it. However, about a year ago or so, after I did my due diligence, and after I took it into account, I did think it was a good idea, and I did recommend it. I did recommend that we look into adopting a traffic commission. In fact, in that very chair I was sitting when I said it a year ago, I was voted down 4-1. So I just wanted to say for the record, because you were on the record saying that I didn't live up to what I had said, I did live up to it. I unfortunately went down 4-1, as I often have. Thank you.
All right. Are there any questions or comments from the council?
Mayor, I'd like to ask you something.
Sure.
Is not our traffic expert here?
Yes, I believe so, right? Or he was. Yeah.
Would you give him the liberties that if he wanted to come up and make a comment?
Sure. Is there something specific you'd like him to comment on, or?
Yes, I would.
Okay.
Is that acceptable?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mayor.
Good afternoon, council members. Doug Anderson, Consulting Traffic Engineering Manager. Be happy to address any questions.
Yeah, I'd like you to address a couple of things that has been stated.
Sure.
Number one, about the failure of the two roads that are really classified as down here in South County, well, beside Artega. They're pouring a lot of money in that too right now. That, and also what sounds like a fix for El Toro Road. Could you address that?
As you're aware, you talked about the I-5 freeway widening the two auxiliary lanes in each direction. It is a project. It's about a $600 million project. They're still looking for funding for that project. It will impact the city, all the cities along the route from Avery all the way up through El Toro. The El Toro ramp project is not funded yet. They're in the project development stage. There are some alternatives they're looking into. And when as that moves forward, that's another about $60 million project they're looking into also. Again, funding is not available for that. It is designed to fix some of the ramp configurations in our city. The ramps at El Toro will be adjusted with those widenings. We have looked into the issue that was brought up earlier with the U-turn. We are looking at the off-ramp on the freeway to put up some electronic type sign that says no right turn on red, which is where the problem is you discussed earlier or identified earlier. As a fix for El Toro's 4 lanes in each direction as you go west of Muirlands. To add additional right turns in that area would require additional right-of-way, which would impact businesses, homes, and other infrastructure along the way, storm drains, catch basins, things like that would have to be moved. El Toro, in my opinion, functions very well as it is. There are some congestions, as was explained earlier, during the peak hours, particularly the morning peak hours. You go westbound, and then the evening peak hours you come eastbound. We've restricted truck traffic on El Toro, so we don't have that issue anymore. And I think that roadway functions very well. It functions as intended, and it does meet the acceptable levels of service in the city and in the county at this time.
The one other portion I'd like for you to address is the fix that the constituent spoke on.
The fix, I'm sorry.
He was saying that if you would open up going straight through
the back
Bridger,
of Raymond and the back
and
of Bridger.
Mm-hmm.
Those are land use decisions that would need investigation. There's CEQA events that need to occur and CEQA investigation, but certainly there are potential connections back through that. There may be large neighborhood issues as you direct a lot of traffic away from El Toro into the neighborhoods. So there would have to be a whole public process before that occurred.
If you look into that, you'll find out there's some catch basins and some big drainages there. If you remember back when they did the Laguna Hill Mall, there was some issues there. So it would not be as easy of a project as it sound like it is when you get through taking care of those, because where would you move them with the Colada is already built out. It doesn't have any place to go without taking property. So where would you move those? And the homes there on Bridger, they have that sound wall because there was nothing between them, and you still have to deal with that that pool place that refused to be a part of the project. So is there any way you could tweak that in any way to get that feasible?
There would have to be a whole public process to look at that, like I said. Engineering, speaking from the engineering side, we can do most anything, but there are consequences.
Well, I've worked with the Caltrans and the OTCA on doing that project and the El Toro Y and stuff, so I know the challenges that it has. And the $600,000 sound like a lot of money, but getting into those challenges and taking those homes and stuff would be way more money than that. So that $600 million is pennies compared to if you attempt to do that and move those catch basins where you would have to ash yourself and drainage. So just it will probably come up again. So I like to give all staff heads up on something that we're going to need the answers on. So you may want to kind of get ahead of the curve and look and get that answer for us. Thank you.
Mr. Anderson, I actually was in, I drive North County quite a bit, and I know that some of our residents like to complain about our traffic, but I spend a lot of time in Tustin and Anaheim, and I actually think the El Toro Road works pretty well, even at 5 o'clock, sometimes when I'm coming home. It does flow, and obviously you have intersections there that actually impede the flow inward of traffic from the freeway, but I think it does a good job. I was wondering, we talked about our light synchronization. Where are we at on that? Are we closing in at 80, 70%? We're about 80% now?
We're about 80% interconnected. The most recent project that was approved by the City Council for traffic signal management is actually an effort to connect all of these signals into one centralized system for monitoring purposes so that we can get ahead of the curve on some of these detector problems we're having and some of the other malfunctions that we're seeing at some of these locations.
And so that's basically for you that are in the audience. We've brought in our light synchronization into our own computer database here in the city that actually allow us to put the time restrictions in that and open up to where we have that in-house now. So I'm pleased that you guys are doing that, and I miss Alton Parkway being open. I can't wait for it to open again. But good job.
Sure.
Thank you. And thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, one of the things I'd like to maybe add, just as a point of I think, information, when we did the traffic forums, I know we had a much more robust presentation. And one of the things that we identified, but also I think it's important to realize, for long-term residents in this community, they understand what El Toro Road was prior to 2006 and the congestion that existed on that roadway, as well as the condition of the shopping centers that aligned El Toro Road. The city, through the redevelopment agency, but working in conjunction with the Orange County Transportation Authority, made an incredibly significant investment in El Toro Road. The city spent approximately $30 million improving El Toro Road. We condemned portions or all of 20 properties in order to widen that roadway. We planted some incredible amount of trees. Our public investment into the roadway itself spurred the redevelopment of the centers that you see, because they did not exist in that fashion. The orchard did not exist prior to that time frame. You couldn't move on El Toro Road very well. El Toro Road, actually, when you go between Rockfield and the freeway, is 5 lanes. There are freeways in this state that are not 5 lanes wide. So let's put things into perspective about what the city has done over the course of time for long-term residents. Prior to 2006, El Toro Road was incredibly bad. We all knew that.
It was.
We invested over $30 million. Does it work well today? I think our traffic engineer said, yes, it does. Do you need additional investment? I think it's already been identified. You'd have to condemn additional property. Whenever you widen streets, people own that land, not the city. And so when we condemned over 20 properties, portions of them, it was a significant cost, and it was not done lightly. It was done with a lot of consideration by this community as to what they wanted to see and what would need to happen to make El Toro work. We think it actually does. When you look at what the people in this community think about traffic, our surveys in 2010 and 2012 actually paint a picture that I think is consistent throughout all of South Orange County, and probably all of Orange County. Traffic's always a concern for residents. It's a concern in Irvine. It's a concern in Laguna Hills. It's a concern everywhere. When you look at the satisfaction rating that occurred in the change between 2010 and 2012 when we surveyed the community, there was a statistically significant increase in satisfaction level. So while the community is concerned about traffic, of course they are. We all are. They're also increasingly satisfied with the city's ability to address it. We've done a significant number of projects in this community. Look at Trabuco Road in and of itself, as well as Geronimo and the other streets and thoroughfares that we have actually completed, in Alton Parkway. A lot is going on in this community as it relates to traffic. This council has done a lot as it relates to traffic. We've got more to do. We think the survey this year will help us understand a bit more about what the residents are currently thinking. That is a statistically significant, valid scientific survey. I'm not care how one wants to look at it. It's certainly built. The methodology is solid. We also want to do the online survey, and that needs to be done correctly. But those are all just simply data points that the council would need to consider when you look at your 5-year plan in 2015 and make the investments that you might want to do. But also, as we indicated, keep in mind, you have a variety of needs in this community, not just traffic. And so you always want to juxtapose everything you want with what you can actually afford and can have. So we look forward as a staff to trying to go forward with the recommendation we have is to do the things we've identified, bring that back to you so we can continue what we think has been a good record of traffic improvements in this community with major investments. And we look forward to actually an even greater bond with the community to ensure that we're addressing the things in their local neighborhoods, but also on the arterial system as well. Sorry, Mr. I just thought it was important for people to remember a $30 million investment in El Toro Road was significant, and we've done a lot, and we'll do a lot more in the future. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for pointing that out. So we did the forums. We got 130-plus comments and feedback from the 39 people that showed up. I know that we're already addressing some of the there's been a lot of discussion about neighborhood issues. A lot of those were what was popping up here. There's clearly people are concerned about some of the arterials, but the neighborhood issues were something that popped up. I know we're addressing those. Is that the plan, to just try to look at each one? I know that you can't address every single comment in a satisfactory way to the person making the comment, because their comment might mean that to do that you had to spend $100 million to satisfy them. But is that the intent, is to go through that list and try to work on each one? The one that pops into my mind was, I know, was it No Outlet on Cherry? Got a sign put up, to try to help people who maybe thought that was a pass-through road or something like that. And,
Sure, absolutely. We will look at and we have looked at every single comment that we ever get, whether it's a phone call or from these traffic forums or whatever. The easy ones, obviously, you can get done quicker than the harder ones, and we've gone through the list. We've addressed what we can now. We'll continue to address what we can in the future, propose new projects. A lot of what we're trying to accomplish right now is the bigger picture of getting our traffic signal coordination under wraps, getting our traffic monitoring consultant on board, tying all our systems together. A lot of these individual issues, thoughts, complaints come from the equipment. Equipment malfunctions, it gets wet, all this happens. And so we're increasing our ability to track that and maintain it. So I look at this next year of building that ability to be able to track these things. Now, once we get it fine-tuned and really running well, now we can do even more improvements. But while we're working on improvements, we want to make sure that we're maintaining very well what we have improved. That's equally important, and that's what I'm really looking forward to doing this next year.
Sure. Well, that was my hope, was that, these forums could help explain to people what we've done, what we're doing, what we plan to do, and then take their feedback on some ideas that they might have. And so, I think that we accomplished at least the goals that I set out. So I'm appreciative of that. I have to say, to a certain extent, with the comments that we get from surveys and so forth, that traffic is a significant issue, I'm a little disheartened that only 39 people showed up. So it makes me wonder if they're just searching for that issue that they feel like they have to give the questioner. So what's the most important thing to you? Well, I think everything runs well, but if I had to pick one, I'd say it's traffic, because I'm not worried that I'm going to get assaulted when I walk my dog at night, right? So, which you might feel in other communities and throughout the country. So, like I said, I was a little disheartened. I mean, I feel like we advertised pretty well. I think we did that very well. And, the one takeaway that I had from just reading through the comments kind of jumped out off the page to me was someone said something about utilizing city events as a way of garnering information from residents. And I think that there's a lot of value, not just on the traffic side, but in all the different departments that we have. So whether it's Park and Rec Services, or what's going on with planning, permits, all those sorts of things. So I see a lot of value in that. I also was appreciative of the comments that we heard about social media. I know that I'm starting to see some tweets sent out when there's some road closures or accidents or things like that. I think that as we try to harness those opportunities, that's going to be even better for the community to kind of avoid those problem areas and not be caught in a significant traffic jam that you're not going to forget for months and months and months. It'll stick with you. We always know that the negative sticks with you more than or as much as maybe the 10 positives do. So, I'm appreciative of what we're doing from that perspective. But there's just some comments there. Councilman Bass.
Yeah, I have a couple questions for Mr. Dunick. You talked about the $30 million El Toro Road improvement. How much of that was funded by assessments to the property owners or businesses or even residents?
There was a mixture of funding for that project, but there were no individual assessments of property owners. It was done through the grants from the Orange County Transportation Authority in combination with an investment of tax increment that the redevelopment agency was receiving and used as a basis to pay for the bonds that were sold in order to do the construction. So there wasn't, beyond the tax increment growth through redevelopment, there wasn't any really assessment on property owners per se.
So essentially we got $30 million of improvements without city investment.
That's true. Yes. No, the vast majority of the investment was OCTA with the redevelopment agency, and so the taxpayers didn't pay for it in that direct sense. The increase in value, if we all recall how redevelopment actually occurs, it's the increase in value after the tax base is frozen that generates the increment, and that was used as a revenue source by which to borrow the dollars in order to do the project from the city's side of the commitment, which was the redevelopment agency. Yes.
But that doesn't cause any increase to the property.
No, it does not.
Taxes.
No, it does not. No.
Right. And then on Alton roadway extension, I know there's a number of sources of funding on that. The county, Measure M, and the city put money in it. The source of city money, where was that?
The source of money that, again, we used was a small borrowing that the city did that is being repaid through the Foothill Circulation Phasing Program that is assessed in that generalized area per development. And so what the city did was the bridge loaned the cash in order to advance Alton Parkway sooner than it would have occurred otherwise, because the developer wanted to do it at the time that they were building the community, and the council at the time thought that was waiting way too long. And so the city bridge loaned the cash for the project, but we're being repaid through FCPP funds that will pay off that debt.
Okay. And then the traffic signalization, Those are funded, I think, largely with Measure M money and some of our gas tax money.
As well as some of the funding that we get from the South Coast Air Quality Management District that we can use for that purpose. So it's predominantly OCTA money through Measure M2, and oftentimes the matches are AQMD funds, because it's a good way to use that dollar in order to move cars along, and it reduces air pollution. So that's why it's eligible for that purpose. But we have used some general fund dollars, gas tax dollars in the past, but the majority of that is coming from Measure M2.
All right, thank you.
All right, any further questions or comments on the item? Okay, I think we just have a receive and file on this as well, so.
Yes.
Some of the council members requested a 5-minute break, so.
Mr. Mayor, actually, on item 20, there's two actions. So we'd actually like you to make a motion in a second and actually vote on item number 20.
My mistake.
Staff
Apologize.
recommendation.
So there's
Second.
a motion and a second. Seeing no further discussion, council members cast your votes on item number 20. Item passed unanimously, and we're going to take a 5-minute break. Yep, no problem. Yeah, I don't think the mic was on either. Oh, now it is.
For everybody in the
Right. Yeah.
it's all there. Like, it adds up to way more than 10% of the parcels as an aggregate, but they go neighborhood by neighborhood. So I don't know how to manage this qualification. So, except maybe just to say, guys, just at the end of the day, adopt them all at once. And then it's still individual actions. But if I say, if you aggregate these and treat them that way, then everybody's in. Okay, public generally. That's kind of a mess when you think about it.
Too many to draw lots. You know,
It would be mayhem because I have to pinpoint everybody, and yeah, it would take all day just to go where they live.
Okay, so we'll reconvene, and that brings us to item 21.
Agenda item 21, pavement management program, submitted by Director of Public Works, City Engineer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, and I'll defer to Mr. Wheeler. He has the presentation on this item.
Thank you. On to my second favorite topic, pavement. We've got Mr. Doug Erdman. He's our principal traffic engineer. Sorry, principal civil engineer. At the last council budget workshop, City Council asked staff to come back with a brief presentation on how we manage our pavement system. It's the single largest asset that the city owns and is responsible for. And so we want to come back and show you our strategy for that pavement management and how we do that, and obviously be available for any questions that you may have.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. I'm here to talk about the City of Lake Forest Pavement Management Program. Pavement management is the planning of pavement maintenance to maximize the life and value of a pavement network. Good pavement management involves proactively maintaining our roads to prolong the pavement life without the need for costly reconstruction. The City of Lake Forest maintains approximately 195 centerline miles of pavement. 72 of these are arterial highways: Lake Forest Drive, El Toro Road, Bake Parkway, Geronimo, Portola Parkway, and 123 of these are local streets. The City of Lake Forest has a street system that is in a good condition. The condition of Lake Forest streets rank 83 out of 100 on the rating scale that's used for pavement, in comparison to Orange County with a rating of average rating of 78 and statewide with a rating of 66. By most measures, this is a street network that is a goal for many other cities. A recent study said that poor road conditions in Southern California end up costing drivers $832 a year in additional vehicle operating costs. This is why maintaining the quality of our roads is important. OCTA requires cities to perform a pavement management study every 2 years to be eligible for M2 funding. Lake Forest is on par with other South County cities in roadway maintenance, with most every city in having roads in the good category. M2 funds make up a good part of our capital improvement pavement budget. The report provides us with a rating for all the city streets, which help us plan repairs outside of our routine maintenance. As part of the city's pavement management program, we evaluate the streets using a micro-paver system, which gives us a pavement condition index, or PCI, which is that numbered rating. A truck like this drives each street and provides us with a rating of 0 to 100 based on a visual survey of the asphalt and the types of distresses. The ratings and what they mean. This is a 95, very good street. It's a new or recently resurfaced street. It's smooth and structurally sound. A good condition street is a street that hasn't been recently maintained, but it's showing a little bit of weathering, but it's still structurally sound with some minor roughness in the ride. A fair street, you'd start to see some cracks appearing and structural deficiencies would start to appear, and the ride would start to be noticeably rough. A poor street, you're seeing significant cracking and weathering, and it's structurally deficient, and it's a noticeably rough ride. And a very poor street, major cracking and weathering, significant structural deficiencies. Roads at this PCI condition are in need of reconstruction. A good pavement strategy takes the right action at the right time. 75% of the pavement life occurs between the rating of 100 and 60. When the rating drops below 60, structural deficiencies start appearing, and the pavement life drops off quickly. By proactively maintaining the city's roads through preventative maintenance, before structural deficiencies start appearing, we can extend the usable life of the roadway. An example is, it's cheaper to change your oil every 3,000 miles than it is to replace your engine every 30. So we target our preventative maintenance efforts to keep our conditions at the good level or above, where we can be most effective in preventing structural deficiencies. The fair and below condition roads are the ones we're currently addressing as part of our annual pavement maintenance program. So you can see here, most of our local and arterial streets were about 75% good and very good, and about little under 20% in the fair range. The fair and the poor ones are the streets we're addressing now as part of our pavement management program. There's a couple of different treatments we use for pavement maintenance. For local streets, we use slurry sealing. Slurry sealing is the application of an asphalt mixture made of oil and fine sand. This treatment typically extends pavement life by 7 or 8 years. Lake Forest annual slurry seal program divides the city up into 7 zones in order to rotate through the 7-year cycle. Last year we performed the slurry seal in Portola Hills. This year we'll be slurry sealing Foothill Ranch. For our arterial streets, we perform an AC overlay, which is the grinding and removal of old deteriorated asphalt concrete and the placing of a new layer of approximately 1.5 to 2 inches of asphalt on the roads. These street overlays typically extend the street life by 20 to 25 years. This table shows several of our recent AC overlay projects and the impact the rating has on, or the impact they have on the PCI rating. You can see for Rockfield, Lake Forest, and El Toro at the I-5 freeway, the ratings went from the low 60s and 70s into the mid 90s, which brings roads from a fair condition back up to a very good condition. Our pavement management report projects that approximately $1.8 million a year is needed to maintain the average PCI rating of 75 and to keep our roads in the target zone for routine maintenance. OCTA M2 funding makes up approximately 75% of this for the annual road maintenance budget. The other 25% we make up through non-recurring grant funds, such as the State Local Partnership Program, which helped fund our Rockfield Lake Forest resurfacing, and we're seeking an arterial pavement management grant this year for some of our future projects. That concludes my report, and I'm available for any questions if you have them.
All right. Do we have any public comments on this item?
We've had no requests.
Okay. Are there any questions with respect to the staff report? And in the paper staff report, or the digital one, I didn't see the breakdown of fair, poor, very good, good. So if you could go back to that slide, and I'm looking at it from a distance here. My eyes aren't as good as they used to be. From the fair and poor on the arterials, what are we looking at? Roughly about 25 to 27%, something like that.
On the arterials, it looks like it's about 28%.
28. Okay. And you said that's where our concentration is right now.
Yes, those are the ones we're addressing now.
Okay.
In fact, one of the big ones on the arterial was Los Alisos, which is actually, they just finished paving that today.
Yep. Great. Okay. And then on the local streets part, I mean, I know that we're doing the slurry seals, and we're focusing on Portola and Foothill Ranch in this 2-year cycle. Do we know roughly where those fair streets are? Are they congregated in one area, or are they kind of spread out?
They're kind of spread out all over. So we're addressing Foothill Ranch. That was the area that had the biggest concentration of fair for that cycle, and looking at the different zones. We'll be moving through the other zones. Next year we'll be moving to Zone E. I think that's south of Lake Forest.
And then from what, Tribuco to Portola or something?
Yeah.
Like that? Okay. All right.
So we'll be cycling through the city on that 7-year cycle, which is about the lifespan of a slurry seal.
Okay.
So we have a numbered PCI rating for every single street and every segment of the streets throughout the whole city. So we can look at it, and you can sort them different ways.
Yep. And, you know, you've told me a lot about the 7-year plan, and then the 21-year plan for resurfacing, and you know, I'm glad to see that we have a systematic approach to it. You know, very appreciative of that. Now, during this process, when we're identifying roads, I mean, if there's one that has significantly degraded in the midst of that 7-year period, is there something that is typically done, even though it might not be inside the zone, or does it have to wait for its 7-year cycle to come up? So
no, the 7-year cycle is new to the city, but for the most part, they've always done it, and then as needed, you can hopscotch around. You know, that obviously impacts some cost to it and things of that nature. But we have a couple streets that we're jumping out and fixing. Cheyenne, if you remember those residents from Foothill Ranch that came out, so that's not getting a slurry seal, that's getting ground and overlaid and properly fixed to take it. And I think there's a couple others that will go out, and again, as needed, and that's where the judgment comes in of where we can jump out and fix a few things that need it versus, again, changing your oil, right? You always want to make sure you're doing the preventative stuff so those streets don't get into that same problem 10 years, 12 years down the road.
Sure, and I figured that was the answer, but I'd be remiss if I didn't ask. And I know that depending on how a street or area was graded or something like that, it could deteriorate faster. So it's good to know that we've got that kind of quick response.
And that's how we do it a lot with the county. We're doing some work on Bridger. Actually, we found an old corrugated metal pipe that's probably been there 70 years. It's all rusted out and starting to collapse. So as soon as we discover that, we'll line that pipe and then pave over it and fix that street. So we do things like that all the time also.
Thanks. Any other questions or comments from Council? Councilwoman McCullough?
Yes. I like to make sure when we're getting all this fixing done, and it's good that we stay on top of it. And the Public Works Department has always been good. When I find a pothole, I tell them, and usually it's fixed in a couple of days. It's not even a week. But my major complaint that I've already given to Tom Wheeler is that I had some of the heavy-duty equipment parking on a residential street and blocking up the street overnight. And they had 4 or 5 vehicles there, and there is some damage to my street. And I don't feel that we should pay it. That was some heavy-duty equipment from fixing Los Alisos, which is paid for by Mission Viejo. I want to make sure that they come and fix it back. It shouldn't come out of our pocket. They should pay it. But first of all, there should be very clear instructions. You do not park those big, huge, heavy-duty trucks, whether you put some plastic where you're going to park them or not. When you bring them in, you're going to do some damage to those slurry seals, which is going to cause our pavement to deteriorate faster. That's going to cost us some money. So there should never be equipment that large and that heavy-duty on a private street, unless they're doing the pavement. Thank you, Mayor.
Absolutely. And seeing no further discussion, I think this is a receive and file with no other action, so we'll just move on to item 22.
Agenda item 22, ordinance determining the speed limit on Rancho Parkway South, submitted by Director of Public Works, City Engineer.
Again, Mr. Mayor, just a brief presentation by Mr. Wheeler on this item.
Keeping you busy tonight.
Absolutely, and thank you again. This is pretty routine ordinance for establishing a speed limit on a new street. In May of 2014, Rancho Parkway South was open. That's a southerly portion near the Baker Ranch Community Park between Alton and the existing extension of it. In order to, according to the California Vehicle Code, in order to establish a speed limit for use of electronic measuring or radar, we need to do a traffic and engineering survey. So we contracted with Hartzog Crable to perform that. They propose establishing a speed limit of 40 miles an hour. The city looks at, or the Vehicle Code causes us to look at three major aspects when we're setting a speed limit. That is the prevailing speed, which is the 85th percentile of the speed limits, the accident records, and any other condition that's not readily apparent to the driver. So the prevailing speed limit was 85 percentile was 44 miles per hour in this case. The Vehicle Code allows us some leeway of up to 5 miles an hour, depending on engineering judgment, which way to round that, up or down, based on, there weren't any accident records, but based on the roadside conditions not readily apparent to the driver. And with those, there's a vertical curve and a horizontal curve, a slight horizontal curve on that roadway, and it's also next to a park. And there's also, we found from traffic analysis, that there's some heavy turning movements on some of those driveways that are out there, again, next to the park, next to a bike trail. So in this instance, the engineer is recommending that you round down, which is very typical. We'd rather encourage people to drive slower next to parks than faster, and that's why we recommend the 40-mile-an-hour speed limit. And with that, we're available for any questions that you may have.
Great. Any public comments?
We've had no requests.
Okay. Councilman Bass?
Move approval.
Second?
There's a motion and a second. Discussion?
Between Lake Forest and Portola, what's the speed limit right there by the park?
I don't remember offhand.
Okay.
They're not connected streets.
Okay, all right.
Seeing no further discussion, council members, cast your votes. Item passes unanimously.
Agenda item 23, consideration of the City Council written communication policy, submitted by Deputy City Manager, Director of Management Services.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the staff provided you a report on this item. We have nothing further to add at this juncture, and as much as this was placed on the agenda by the council, it is your discretion as to how you would like to proceed.
Great. Thank you. I did bring this up myself. It's one of the things that I kind of wondered why we went through what we did after seeing the staff report. I kind of understand. From my perspective, I'd like to have direct access to my email, be able to communicate with residents without having to go through our wonderful council staff person, but I think it probably puts a tremendous burden on her. The question clearly was how you deal with the Public Records Act, and seems like with this new program that's coming into place, the way I understand it, all the staff are going to be using this particular program to capture all the emails and safeguard them for Public Records Act purposes. We'd be able to also come alongside that and use that same program. So first thing is, I want to make sure that once that's implemented, that we could have access back and forth with our email. And then also just looking at how the policy has evolved over the last 20-plus years, I see a variety of reasons for why the council chose to do what it did with respect to official communication coming from council members on letterhead and so forth. But I think that it would be advantageous to each one of us to at least have the opportunity to provide thank you notes to residents, be able to respond to them just with a brief note card. I think if you're looking at a note card, you're not seeing it as some sort of official document from a city council member advocating a policy or something like that. I think it comes across in a much different manner. And so those are really just the two areas that I'm focused on. But I'd be happy to hear comments from my colleagues as well. And I should have gone to public comment. Do we have any with respect to this?
We've had no requests.
Okay. So those are just the two issues for me, so I'll open it up to the full council.
Mayor, I'd like to ask you, you said that you see why they did what they did. Are you talking about where we can't write people without getting approval and giving it to the clerk's department and having them to do it on the city letterhead? Which portion of it are you talking about?
No, you'd be able to continue to do that.
No,
There's no issue there. But
well, I don't feel that we should have had to do that. I did not vote for that. The way that our writing policy is today is because former Mayor Rudolph sent a congratulation letter to I think it was either Wilson or Arnold, one or the other, and they wanted to know what was in the letter. It was just a little thank you, you did a good job on something that he had done. And the council felt that they should have had a copy of it, that she doesn't have the right to write the governor, president, or anyone else. Everything has to come through. That's why that burden was put on the staff. And two of us voted no, and we didn't have the vote to change that. But I agree with you. There is no reason that I should not be able to tell someone thank you or no thank you. And it was not anything political. She was just saying you did a good job, which in the media, the paper, everybody was saying he did a good job on whatever that. I can't even remember what it was now. So I'm very happy that somebody is finally here that would like to tweak that and give us back what really is our First Amendment right. So I support however you want to tweak it to the better.
yeah, and that's really what it is. So it's, again, for me, it's access to email and then just some thank you note cards, something that isn't letterhead, but just gives us that opportunity to communicate that. We're constantly out there meeting with residents, and they're responding to us, and I think it's just a good way to be able to respond back without having to overburden the city clerk's office. So
I just want to tell you thank you, Mayor, because not only that, fellow council persons all over the state, and even some of the legislators, they sometimes will write you a note. You couldn't write them a note back unless you went through the clerk's department. And they write you notes on letterhead or something that shows it from their city, and we could not do that back for all these years because a person told a governor, congratulations, you did a good job. That it's time for it to be fixed, and I thank you for bringing it forward.
absolutely. So any other discussion, Councilman Bass?
Yeah, just a couple. One is on the email. Under the new system, when it's fully operational, all that, I think I understand that we'll then be able to directly access it and just do like I do with my home email, just do reply, and it goes to them, and it stays in the system backed up and all that public record stuff.
Yes, that's correct. You could access it from your home, from your iPad, from any computer. And sends and receives would be backed up by the system.
Okay. And then the other is, I want to mention to the council an example of what I would have liked to use city letterhead for, but talked to the city clerk and found out that it was not permitted, so I used my own letterhead, which is fine. But that, which doesn't say anything on it, just blank paper. I mean, it didn't say Dave Bass Councilman or anything, but an Eagle Scout of mine is about to start his second year law school, and there's a scholarship that he was applying for, and he needed a recommendation from a friend, other than a family member, and he felt that having someone from the community, a community leader, would be helpful. I talked to city clerk about it and found couldn't use letterhead, but that I could sign it as a city councilman and include my card, which is what I did. I think, years ago I had a good friend of mine who he was a retired professor from Cal State LA. He's actually professor emeritus. Did actually write a letter of recommendation on my behalf, sent a copy of it to me, and he did use Cal State LA letterhead. I mean, it wasn't any position he was taking for the university or something in support of something that was totally unrelated to the university. So I'm not sure how we do it, word this so that we keep it out and, not use it for, purposes that probably we don't want to use it for, but something like that, like recommendations or even thank you. I bought some thank you cards myself. I mean, I don't have a problem with doing that, but those are just my thoughts on it.
Okay. Any further comments? Okay. Well, what would be appropriate tonight? I know that we're just first time that's been on the agenda, so just
Mayor and Council, we don't want to do some drafting and bring back a draft form that incorporates these consensus ideas. I think we could go right to work on it and make the email idea contingent upon having a system in place, but the council could look at it before that goes online and have it all ready to go at the time that it does.
Okay. Consensus?
Yeah, you can just consensus to bring back the ideas that you've discussed.
Okay.
I just want to ask something very quickly. Not to spend more than a few bucks, but I think it would be a good idea if we had letterheads with our individual names on them as opposed to all 5 members of the council. I found it peculiar a few years ago when I learned that letters here have everyone's name on it. Yes, and then I found it even more peculiar when I learned that council members may not write out even a thank you note to some governmental agency. But I really think if we invested a few dollars in having letterheads with individual names, I don't see any harm there.
Okay. Maybe what we could do is have the staff come back to us with some policy suggestions incorporating some of the comments that were made today, and there might be certain reasons or certain ways that cities tend to do this, so maybe just kind of giving us that feedback and letting us know what the parameters are. I'm guessing that some of this is governed a little bit by state law, especially when it comes to using it for political purposes, which I don't think anyone's really discussing here, but there are probably these lines that you don't know whether you've crossed or not crossed, so just helping us understand that would be beneficial. But from my perspective, helps us be more responsive to the community and at the same time alleviate a burden on the city clerk's office if we were to all take advantage of them the way we probably could if we wanted to. I think we try not to, but in my mind that tends to be to the detriment of communication with residents. So, yeah. Councilwoman McCullough.
Thank you. I would like to see it where we have our individual letterhead, because when you're writing for a person, like a lot of the young people when they're going to college, they need a letter from you, and that doesn't mean all of you know that person, and that makes it kind of, or even if you're relating to a legislator or something, that's saying, when you put it on a letterhead with all of our names on there, that means all of us agree. But then when you put it on there, you put it on some letterhead that's just have your name, that's just specifically you. The other thing is I'd like to check with staff, which I think I know the answer, but it wouldn't hurt me to ask anyway. And Madam Stephanie or Scott Smith could answer, our attorney. When we take and start tapping into our email here at the city for our own personal use, does that, I'm quite sure I know the answer, but I still like to hear it publicly, does that make our computer or our iPod completely open for if there was an, if they needed to go into it, because we're using it to go into our emails here at City Hall. With our personal computers and iPod, unless we do any city functions on there, they cannot go out, they cannot request to see them. But if we're doing some city function coming into our emails here at the city and then putting it on our personal iPods and computers, does that make that rule that is there, that they have access to it? To our
Mayor and Council, that's the subject of a case against the city of San Jose that's on appeal right now to the California Supreme Court. But I can tell you in the meantime that having separate email accounts, one delineated for city use and one delineated for personal use, makes it much easier, but not airtight, to segregate city correspondence from personal correspondence.
Okay, so we would have to have two separate email accounts.
That's and that's still not completely airtight, but that's the law right now, according to a Court of Appeals decision.
So it came before the Administration Policy Committee for the state, so that's why I was asking. Because I don't want to step in something because I didn't know. Thank you.
So, Councilman Batt.
Just a quick item. I'm more willing to have staff, say, run by a draft or whatever, talk with the mayor on it, since he had brought this item up, which I'm glad you brought it up. It's a good item, but if they need to sort of run some stuff by you, that might be helpful. It's totally up to you guys.
Okay.
But that's an option.
There's consensus for that, then it just gives one point of contact here.
We're all in agreement.
Yeah, and you know, I think the real issue that there's what we think should happen, and then there's just how government bureaucracy works. So I think that we're going to find some of the things we want to do we might not be able to do without making photocopies and it being somewhere in City Hall, and then other things that we want to do, like writing a thank you note. I don't know, maybe there's not Public Records Act requirements for a copy of every thank you note. I don't know, but that's what I figure you'll get back to us, so you kind of get some of the thoughts, and you can let us know what we can and can't do based on state law. So, great. So, consensus is okay? Do you need a vote, or consensus is fine?
No, I think we've got good direction here
Okay, great.
on the bring back.
All right. I think that brings us to item 24. And
Agenda item 24, legislative and regulatory matters, submitted by city manager.
Mr. Members of the council, the staff provided just a quick update as it relates to the city-sponsored bill related to the dissolution of the redevelopment agency and our relationship with the County of Orange on the distribution of funds. I'm not sure if we, Mr. Cumming, have any additional that has happened since the posting of this agenda, but if not, I think we've answered everything that we know at this juncture. Is there anything else?
Mr. City Manager, just a brief update.
Okay.
I know that we heard recently, actually today, that the bill is being reviewed by the governor's office. It's still not officially with the governor, but it's been reviewed by his staff, and so there are some preliminary questions for David Jones, our consultant with Emmanuel Jones and Associates, which are being addressed by him and legal counsel. So we're hopeful that the bill advances through the legislative process and makes it officially to the governor's desk within the matter of weeks.
do we see those questions as being a positive? Is that like kind of typical process that you'd go through, or does that mean that maybe we might be hitting a speed bump here? Or?
It's hard to say at this juncture.
Okay.
I mean, honestly, there's always likely going to be some level of question, but at this point, it's a little hard to say. Our lobbyist has been very good about navigating those questions to date, so we're hoping he continues to have success.
Okay. As I understand it, it hasn't had a single opponent in either house.
That's
in the
correct,
committee
right.
or on the
Not a
floor,
single
right?
vote in opposition.
Okay. Good to hear. So just hope nothing happens at the last minute. So.
Assemblyman Wagner is optimistic that it will be passed. So,
thank you.
Great. Any questions from staff on, or sorry, from the council on?
We do have support on both sides up there.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
We did a lot of lobbying.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a receive and file as well. So we'll just go to the city manager's report.
I have nothing further this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Bass.
Just briefly attended I hate to say that it sounds routine, but it's a good thing that's routine, a ribbon cutting for another new business in Lake Forest. It means, one, we have new business, and two, that they join the chamber, and both of which are positive, and it's good to have an active chamber going. Also took my grandsons, two of them, to the movies in the park Friday night, and they thoroughly enjoyed the movie, which I expected they would. And I enjoyed it too, partly because they enjoyed it. And then the other thing I'd like to have council consider is whether or not we might want to place council comments more towards the beginning of the agenda, right after public comments, because sometimes comments are made by the public that we can't really comment on until the end of the meeting, and they're gone. And a number of people have left the meeting by then, and I'm thankful for those of you who stayed here till the end. But it's something that we might want to consider for future order of the agenda.
Okay. I don't know if there's any other support for, I guess that would just be for a discussion, right?
On this?
Is what we'd have to do. So
On this?
on that.
Actually, I don't know if you remember, but I brought it up last year that this is before before Councilman Bass was here, but I brought it up mid last year, and I said effectively what Mr. Bass just said. By this time of the night, most everybody's gone. Most everybody who made a comment and who deserved it to be addressed is gone. So right after, he said it perfectly. Well, he said it perfectly. But I second that. I had said the same thing, and I think it's a brilliant idea.
We don't want you to, not pre-debate it. Yeah, I hear Mr. Nick saying he wants to build consensus.
So I just want to say that I do support it based on that.
To talk about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all. Thank you.
All right. Councilwoman McCullough.
Thank you, Mayor. I attended Southern California Association of Government, and they are doing a summit on property. And if you can by any ways make it, please make it, because it's for the overhaul all the region. They also, they deferred their meeting because of the Lake California City the first Thursday of next month. They deferred it to the following week. They are planning on another one of the summits that they had before, where they had the former governors, all four governors, former governors. Warrant was still in the last time they had it. They're planning on having the governors at an economics summit, and I'll get the date, or the staff will get the date. So hopefully you can go and participate, because they're trying to come up with some solutions on how to make sure that we stay viable. We had 2 more Eagle Scouts, and I found out at that Eagle Scout meeting that our city do have the most Eagle Scouts in the county, and every time we get an Eagle Scout or we get a Girl Scout that gets her silver and gold, you have to realize that that is a future that is being built, because Scouts generally take and live by their oath, and instead of them putting all these children in the paper all the bad things. I wish we would get more things in the paper and on the press and Twitters and things of the good things happening, because we have a lot of good children out there that are doing a lot of great things that's going to be giving us a good future and clean up some of the messes we've made. Also, OCFA, the Fire Authority, we have an interim chief as of Thursday. It was voted unanimously for one of the, we grind it down to two people, and in fact, the one of my choice. I didn't get a chance to vote because I got there late because I was at the scout thing. But the person that I had in mind to vote for, he did get it. And I'm very happy that we now have an interim chief. We're working on a permanent chief now. But that's a plus for us because we've been without a chief. I also attended we had a special meeting for the special needs and the CAC. We have too many blessed acronyms. Some of them are the same thing in certain meetings, so I don't know what CAC is, but I know SNAC is the special needs. That's concerning our mobility for seniors and people that has ADA. And we also, through our Senior Citizen Advisory Council, we're trying to get a biking going. And OTCA said when we get a floor mat for getting biking for seniors, that they will be considering funding it. And on the new special needs, they're putting in some new buses, and they're going to we've asked for them to put in more wheelchair availability because sometime we've had some seniors left behind because couldn't anymore be on there. And also with the buses, we're asking for the bike racks to be extended out a little bit further, because also the people that ride the bus and then get off and ride their bike, that is limited also. So they're redesigning. Since they're going to be putting in some new buses, they might as well put in those new features also. And they're also working with Amtrak because, Amtrak now has a bike card on there that's nothing but bikes in there, and you can stay with your bike or you can hook your bike up and go. So we're doing a lot of things in transportation. So you may want to go online and you'll see some of it in the bike safety, and they're willing to help with the bike safety training also for the seniors. Thank you. Everybody have a good night. We probably won't see you for a while, so 2 weeks? So have a safe time.
Councilman Voigts.
I too attended 2 new openings of businesses here in Lake Forest that both joined our chamber. We've got an all-volunteer chamber that does remarkable work, and I just want to commend them and thank them for representing the businesses of our city. And we've got an upcoming Shop and Dine coming up in September, and it's something that many of you have received in your mail, the coupons that are going to be used that week. And it's a wonderful event, and we have well over 100 restaurants that are participating with us. And so watch for your mail. Use those out there and dine in Lake Forest. Went to an Eagle Scout Court of Honor this week from Troop 808. 2 young men here from Lake Forest that both completed their projects here in Lake Forest, and in doing so, they both received tiles from the city of Lake Forest. And it's something that we don't do enough of. Spend time and encouraging our children to do good. And when a young scout gets to the Eagle, that's the highest award that that Boy Scouts have to present to them, and it's not without perseverance, dedication, and time that they put in to get that, achieve that. So it's always a great pleasure and honor to be there to celebrate that with them and honor them for that. So, there's not enough organizations that talk about on my honor, I will do my best. It's a novel thought in today's society, and so I want to say that Lake Forest does produce a lot of Eagle Scouts because of the quality of Scout leaders and families that we have participating in Scouting here in Lake Forest. Nationally, less than 2% of Scouts make it the Eagle, and here in Lake Forest, we have about 4% of our Scouts that make it the Eagle, so double the national average. So hooray for Lake Forest Scouting. So nothing further, and thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Nick.
Well, first of all, my many thanks to all of you to all who were here tonight, especially to those who are still here. I don't know why you're here, but I have to be here. Most of us have, well, us, this side of the podium, we have to be here, but you should have gone home at least 2 hours ago. In all seriousness, thank you. I thank the staff for having put, as always, great reports, which tremendously help us decide most intelligently. In all seriousness, I consider it is a privilege, an honor to do this. I do it freely, I do it with pleasure, and it is equally a pleasure to be sitting next to Mayor Robinson, who I consider my blue-eyed brother, for who he has been to me ever since he came into my life several years ago. It is equally a pleasure to be sitting here next to you, Dwight. You must know that. Now, to end things on a lighter note, I always want to make sure that, when I do something, I want to make sure I'm doing the right thing. Or if I'm not, then I wouldn't do it. Tom, the speed limit on Rancho Parkway, the 40-mile speed limit, that does not apply to us, right? The people this side of the podium, that doesn't apply to us, does it? Or does it? It does? No, actually, so it does apply, even to Mr. Dunick? I mean, Mr. Dunick should be, if anything, Mr. Dunick and Lieutenant, Mr. Dunick, because Mr. Dunick is the boss of everyone, and Lieutenant, of course, because he's got a nasty gun on his belt. Thank you for that report again, Tom, and I wish you all the best in life. Tonight, tomorrow, for as long as we're here on earth, to the end of time. Thank you. It's a blessing to live in America, to be an American, to live among you. I will never forget that. How much you have been family to me, and how much I will enjoy life till there is no life for me, till he decides otherwise. Thank you.
Great, thanks.
I had a few seconds left on my time.
Okay.
Could I insert that few seconds? I see some young people still here, and one of the things, if this is your first time at Lake Forest City Hall, I think there's some city pins over there by Mr. Carlos. Make sure you get a city pin before you leave, so you can say you have been to Lake Forest City Hall. Thank you.
Great.
Thanks, Mayor.
Absolutely. Had the pleasure of going to the OC Fair the Thursday before it ended, which happened to be Lake Forest Day, so hopefully there were a lot of residents that were there, and got to represent the city. Councilman Bass and his wife were there as well. I got to bring my kids while my wife was out of town, so it was Daddy Day at the fair. We had a lot of fun, and I think that's a great way. We're always looking for those ways for a community to come together, whether it's concerts in the park, movies in the park, or even things like Lake Forest Day at the fair. So, I'm so glad that we have those opportunities for us to all get together and be neighborly with one another, and it helps in many, many different ways. So we live in a great city with a lot of great residents, and thank you all for giving me the opportunity, and I adjourn the meeting.